The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
If your Vancouver Canucks win the Stanley Cup, I'm telling you, we got to build a statue of Jim Benning. Let's go.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks, and also a Canucks writer since 2013, currently with a Daily Hive Vancouver. Before we dive into today's episode, we got to thank you. I'm talking to you for tuning into Locked On Canucks. You want to know why? Because it is your Canucks almost every damn day. We're part of that Locked On Podcast Network. They're doing the most for sports fans across the world. And for our show, if you haven't done so already, do us a solid, why don't you? Make sure you go subscribe, like this video, follow us, maybe even leave a review on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And hey, I'm not here without you, but we also are not here without the sponsors. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL is coming back, and now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Wow. Go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You know where it all starts with NHL teams is at the draft, okay? And on today's episode of Locked On Canucks, because we are at the tail end of August, I want to go through the Canucks drafts from the 2010s, right? And I think we're at that point where even that 2019 draft, I think it's fair to put some judgment on that. You know, those guys are now not prospects anymore. So what I want to do today is rank the Canucks drafts from worst to best. I said best to worst, but I like to leave a little suspense. Maybe we'll shake up that title. Because again, from the Gillis era to the Benning era, there was some good and some real bad. But again, like I said off the top, if the Canucks win the Stanley Cup with this core, does Jim Benning deserve a statue? He built this team through the draft with some absolute superstar talent, but he did have his fair share of misses on his way to the top. I'll touch a bit on Demko as well as we get to the 2014 draft, because Demko is in the news right now. Really the big story coming out of Canucks training camp. But we talked about it last week. He's not 100%. And it seems to be some trepidation around if he will be ready to go for the beginning of the regular season. Again, crazy thing that was 10 years ago that the Canucks actually drafted Thatcher Demko. But let's get right into it, okay? Ranking the Canucks drafts in the 2010s. And I think the nominee for worst on my list, and I don't think it's much of a debate, has to be the 2016 draft. That's right. The draft where the Canucks, Jim Benning got his stiffy on for Olli Juolevi at the World Juniors, ended up drafting him 5th overall. And there are some candidates here, and I will touch on this later in the week too, but is that the worst draft pick in Canucks history? Because there's a good chance it might be. I mean, look, there were definitely some misses in the first round of that draft, but of players selected in the top 20, even if you want to go top 21, Olli Juolevi was the only player to play less than 50 NHL games. And heck, only 3 players in that top 21 played less than 100 games, with Logan Brown just missing out at 99. The Olli Juolevi stiffy from Jim Benning is hard to fathom even to this day. They passed on Tkachuk because they already had Virtanen. And after Juolevi, it was Tkachuk, it was Clayton Keller, Mikhail Sergachev, Charlie McAvoy, Jacob Chicharon. Man, oh man, there were so many good options there for the Vancouver Canucks, but Jim Benning had his absolute rock hard on for Olli Juolevi. And in terms of the rest of that draft, what makes this draft even worse for me is that a team as bad as the Canucks were had a 1st, a 3rd, a 5th, a 6th, and 2 7s. Where are the drafts in the 2nd round and 4th round, might I ask? Those draft picks were part of the ill-timed trade for Jared of Eric Gabranson and Jared McCann. So the Canucks traded away Jared McCann and a round 4 pick and a round 2 pick to the Florida Panthers for Gabranson and a 5th round pick. I mean, like, not only do you draft Juolevi, who was the biggest bust of probably of my generation, Vancouver Canucks fans, the biggest bust of the 2010s. Maybe not even on the Canucks, but across the league, considering where he was drafted. I guess Neil Yakupov probably takes the cake there. But yeah, you draft Ulevy and you trade away your second and a fourth for Erica Branson, along with Jared McCann, who's blossomed into a pretty good NHLer himself. This draft was so bad. It was so hard to fathom. And really, like, this might have been the worst 12-month stretch, I think, in Canucks history. I know a lot of people talk about 2013-14 was bad in the torts year, but you talk about this draft. At the time, we didn't know how bad it was, but there was some trepidation. And then 2016-17 was, in my opinion, the most depressing season in Canucks history. The last season of Willie D, lots of Chaput, lots of Magna, lots of sadness, okay? So we have 2016 firmly in last in terms of the worst drafts from the 2010s, the Vancouver Canucks. Number 9, it's a bit of a cop-out, but it's 2010, okay? You know, at this point, Mike Gillis was wheeling and dealing, okay? Something that, our boy Jim Benning wasn't quite so good at. So the Canucks only had 5 draft picks. Their earliest one was in the 4th round. Patrick Manelli, Adam Polasek, Alex Friesen, Jonathan Eladi, and Sawyer Hannay. And the only NHL game played in this group was Alex Friesen, who played a whopping 1 NHL game. In terms of the picks that the Canucks traded, I was kind of curious about this. I'm like, where did these picks go? And so they traded their first, and this was not a good trade, but they traded the first-round pick in 2010 along with Steve Bernier and Michael Grabner for Keith Ballard and Victor Oreskovich. Now, Keith Ballard was supposed to solidify this blue line. He barely played. He was injured. He was a third-pairing guy. He was not really a useful contributor to the Vancouver Canucks for the most part. And, of course, Michael Grabner went on to be a pretty damn good NHLer himself. They also traded their second, along with Nathan Page, for Rafi Torres, so pretty damn good deal there at the 2010 trade deadline. And then finally, they also traded a 3rd-round pick for Andrew Alberts, who, you know, he played a role for the Canucks as well. So that's what the Canucks draft picks won in 2010s. Not much to say about that draft other than, when you don't pick until the 4th round, it's hard to hit some home runs. Number 8, okay? And this is a Mike Gillis draft where he actually had a lot of draft capital. But it was 2011, where he actually made 8 draft picks. I believe that might have been the most he made as general manager of the Vancouver Canucks, and Nicholas Jensen was the big pick there. Now, this is I always felt closely tied to this draft. You know, I knew at this point it was my time to make the NHL was done because I was draft eligible in 2011. Except my ice hockey career ended when I was 12 years old, so figure that one out. But in terms of this draft, no one played more than Frankie Corrado, a 5th-round pick who played 76 career games. Nicholas Jensen only played 31 games. Alexander Grenier played 9. Joseph Labate played 13. The other 5 draft picks, you got zilch. And, you know, it was a staple of the Mike Gillis era, right? It was hard to have an impact at the draft when you're picking late in the 1st round. But that's also a cop-out because what the Gillis administration, for the most part, failed to do was unearth good players in the later rounds of the draft. And sure, you could grasp straws at Frankie Corrado, who, you know, for a long time, it's like, when's this guy going to make the team? But he didn't really amount to much of the NHL either. But yeah, so the whole Gillis being bad at drafting, I think, is a fair criticism. And it's not just the fact that he had late 1st-round picks. It's the fact that his scouting department sucked. But there was a lot of other good to come from the Gillis era. And unfortunately, I think the being bad at drafting ideology was one of the reasons why they hired Jim Benning in the first place. Let's end off with one more draft. We're counting down here. We had 2016 at number 10, 2010 at number 9, 2011 at number 8, and number 7, I have the 2012 draft, where, again, in this one, Mike Gillis had 5 picks. He picked Brendan Gaunce, who's still floating around, man. He's still a recall option for the Columbus Blue Jackets, I believe, putting up some nice AHL numbers there. Shout out to him, a little Cam Neely former Canuck of the Week for you there. They also drafted Alexander Mallet in the 2nd round, Ben Hudden in the 5th round, and then 2 other guys, Wesley Martin and Matthew Beattie, who never played NHL games. And Ben Hudden, man, you know, he might have been a bit of a disappointment in Vancouver in the sense that he came in with, you know, that rookie season. He was playing a top 4 role, had 26 points his first year, and then never really lived up to that, never really solidified the defensive side of his game. Maybe too busy on Tinder. I don't know. You heard some stories out there, both firsthand on the interweb. But hey, beside the point, man, you know, a guy's got to get some, and a gal's got to get some, man. Come on, it is what it is. But Ben Hutton was the crown jewel of that draft. He got over 500 career games. Shout out to Ben Hutton, still doing it with the Vegas Golden Knights to this day. 6 drafts to get to as we wrap up here on a Monday in August. Hockey around the corner. We'll talk about some of the best drafts of the Canucks in the 2010s. Talk about from Gillis to Benning. And maybe we'll touch a bit more on Thatcher Demko. And it's an interesting top 3, I think, for the best drafts of the 2010s. I think you can make an argument for any of the top 3. Want to know what I picked? Stay tuned to find out. We're going to get to that shortly after we shout out our friends over at FanDuel. All right, so we're officially now in the last week of August, okay? You know what that means? Summer's coming to an end. I'm sad about that. I'm sure you might be sad about it too. But what it also means is sports, they're coming back, baby. NFL right around the corner. NHL, it's getting there too, baby. Not too far away from opening night puck drop. And on FanDuel, they got you covered for all of that stuff, okay? You know, they are America's #1 sports book, but they got something a little different going on right now, okay? Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. Wow! All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime you want, baby. Just go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and download America's #1 sportsbook. All right. We're back here on Locked On Canucks. Your Canucks almost every damn day. I mean, we got you covered at least 3 days a week here in August. Often it's been 4 or 5. Trying to get some clips out there if you follow us on YouTube as well. In case, some of you don't want to listen to me talk for a half an hour. Or don't want to listen to Kyle talk for half an hour. I get it, man. Life is busy. Sometimes you don't want to hit the rewind button. It's too much work. So I got some clips on YouTube for you from some highlights from the show as well. But in terms of this episode, we're talking about the Canucks drafts from the 2010s. Like I said, it's fair to judge each and every one of these drafts now. The guys from the 2010s, most of them aren't playing. The guys from the 2019 draft, it's fair to judge them, right? We're over 5 years past that draft now, from June of 2019. Time flies when you're having fun, or time flies when you're trying to, bury your trauma being a Canucks fan. Bob Luger knows a lot of trauma. We are all Canucks. And there has been a lot of trauma. The 2010s was a traumatic time for Canucks fans, Lots of highs, a lot of lows. And at the draft table, we've gone through the lows. We're getting to some of the absolute peaks. Get your Canuck blue and green stiffy ready to go. All right, so we had 2016 at number 10, 2010 at number 9, 2011 at number 8, 2012 at number 7, and at 6, we have the final Mike Gillis draft, the 2013 draft. Now, this draft probably would have been one of the worst if it wasn't for the dramatic deal to trade Corey Schneider to the New Jersey Devils for the 9th overall selection. And of course, with that pick, the Canucks selected their former captain, Bo Horvat. Bo Horvat again. Look, he had some comments, right? Some parting shots. I don't got a lot of love for Bo Horvat, although from being in that dressing room a little bit, super, super nice guy, down-to-earth guy. A little less standoffish than some other players you might meet in NHL dressing rooms. So Bo Horvat, the person, great. Bo Horvat, the petty guy about leaving Vancouver. I don't know if I love that one so much, but he's making his money now. And he's had a hell of an NHL career, right? We're talking about a guy who has over 500 points now in the NHL. He's definitely one of the better players in that draft class, a class that included Nathan MacKinnon. But not many guys from that draft class have hit 500 points. He's actually 5th overall in that draft class in terms of points. MacKinnon by far in 1st, Barkov 2nd, Lindholm 3rd, Monahan 4th, and Horvat 5th. Although Jake Gensel, man, in terms of points per game, he'd be right behind MacKinnon and Barkov, arguably the 3rd best player from that draft class, in my opinion. But Bo Horvat, I kind of wonder what Bo Horvat might have been in Vancouver if he came in during a different era, right? He came in at a time where the Canucks made the playoffs in his rookie season, but then they sucked. And he was the guy. And Bo Horvat should not be the guy on your team. We've said a long time in this market, good second-line center. He's being paid like a first-line center. But if he's your second-line center, things are going pretty well. And it just got to the point in Vancouver with the contract, the needs elsewhere on the team that he became an expendable piece. But in terms of the rest of that draft, there was high hopes, man. But it just did not work out. So the Canucks had 2 first-round picks in 2013. They had selected Hunter Shinkaruk at 24th overall. And I've said it before, every Dayers might know, but one of my worst takes of all time, and I wrote this for the Hockey Writers back in 2014 or 2015, was ripping the trade of Hunter Shinkaruk from Marcus Granlund, saying, what are the Canucks doing here? Shinkaruk, the potential. Granlund's just another guy. And Granlund was just another guy, but at least Granlund had, a couple hundred NHL games, whereas Hunter Shinkaruk ended his career with 15 NHL games played. Man, oh man, there was a lot of promise for that guy, and it just did not work out. Okay, Hunter Shinkaruk, by the way, still playing, man, still playing. Spent last season with the Iserlohn Roosters of the DHL in the German league, playing with another familiar name that Canuck fans might know, not the Canucks, but Michael Dow-Cole, one of the big busts from the 2014 draft, which, we're going to get to. Other than Shinkaruk, there was Cole Castles, the guy who was supposed to shut down McDavid, right? One of the most laughable notions in recent Canucks history. Cole Castles with, I think he had a good showing against McDavid in that Young Stars game. And everyone's like, this is our third line center. He's going to shut down McDavid. And Cole Castles went to play 0 NHL games. Finally, there was Jordan Subban as well. That guy was floating around the organization for a long time. We're all waiting for him to get a shot. Some good AHL numbers, but again, a guy that never worked out. So that's the bottom half of the list for the Canucks drafts in the 2010s. And hey, Mike Gillis, sorry, man. You did not crack. None of your drafts cracked to the top 5. Mostly with Gillis's drafts again. Nothing too sexy about them. But at number 5, let's go with the most recent draft on this list, and it's the 2019 draft now. I think this draft has a lot less shine on it, especially after the Canucks dealt Vasily Podkolzin, the 10th overall pick from that draft, for a 4th rounder to the Edmonton Oilers. What? But if you frame the Canucks draft this way, right? Let's say they drafted Nils Höglander at 10th overall, and they drafted Vasily Podkolzin at 40th overall. Suddenly you probably feel a little bit better about that draft, right? No, there's no way Vasily Podkolzin would have fallen that far down the draft. But Nils Höglander, man, another one of those small guys that just got disrespected, eh? And, you look right now, he's 11th overall from that draft class in points. He's hit 50 goals in his NHL career, which is 7th overall in that draft class. So, again, for a guy who's selected in the 2nd round, that's pretty damn good. And the other reason why this 2019 draft was a good one for the Canucks, and let's be real, they had a lot of misses, right? There was, they had 9 picks here. Vasily Podkolzin was a miss. Aiden McDonough, who had some promise, he gone. Arvid Kosmar, good World Juniors. He didn't amount to nothing. But Artur Shilovs, selected with one of 3 6th-round picks the Canucks had. He might be the starting goaltender for this team heading into 2024 here. With Thatcher Demko, again, reportedly not healthy. And again, a guy who's been injured time and time again. Throughout not just his NHL career, but his professional hockey career, even dating back to his NCAA days when he had hip surgery playing at Boston College. So Artur Shilovs, from a 6th-round pick in 2019 to potentially starting for your Vancouver Canucks. I mean, that is striking absolute gold if that happens to be the case, and if Artur Shilovs hits on his potential. A reminder that this guy has still played just 9 regular season games for your Vancouver Canucks, but of course played 10 playoff games for them and played pretty damn well last year for your Vancouver Canucks. All right, we're getting to the top ones here, but at number 4, I have the 2015 draft, okay? And that draft, the Canucks selected one of the sexiest players in their team's history, okay? With Brock Besser. Brock Besser at 23rd overall. And we all know that 2015 draft was a haul, right? One of the most legendary drafts in recent memory. But Brock Besser was a part of it. And I think at the time, for myself included, doing a bit of scouting here and there, but Brock Besser was a guy who wasn't really on my radar at that point in the draft. But shows you how much I know, right? Brock Besser has gone on to be one of the best players in that draft. Right now, he is top 10 in goals. He's top 10 in points as well. So for a guy who was selected at 23rd overall, pretty damn good haul for your Vancouver Canucks. And there's some great names below him too, right? Like Kirill Kaprizov is a guy who's over a point a game, doesn't have as many points as Besser, but has played about half the games. Rope Hintz, a great second round selection. But there's so many good players in that draft. But thankfully, the Canucks didn't pull a Boston, and they actually came away with some players. All right. For the rest of that draft, we got Guillaume Brisebois. He's still floating around. And the other player who surpassed the 200 game mark was Adam Gaudette, who I still feel for Adam Gaudette, right? I think his development was rushed in Vancouver. I don't think that's much of a debate. I do wonder what Adam Gaudette could have been if they actually seasoned him in the AHL properly. Maybe it's nothing. Because the guy now, we talked about it before, he scored almost 50 goals in the AHL last year, one of the league leaders in goals. I believe I can't remember if he's with St. Louis or Ottawa heading into the season. He was with St. Louis last year. But Adam Gaudette's a guy who I wouldn't be surprised if he gets another crack in the NHL this season, just based on how good he was in the AHL last year. All right, let's get to number 3 and then leave some suspense on the other side with 2 and 1, okay? And like I said a couple minutes ago, I think there's an argument for any of these drafts as the best draft of the 2010s for your Vancouver Canucks. But in third place, I have 2014. And you might go, what? Why is 2014 in the conversation for the best overall draft? Because the Canucks selected Jake Virtanen at 6th overall and left a decent amount of talent on the board because they wanted to chase the big boy from Abbotsford. Of course, they pass on William Nylander, Nikolai Ehlers. You heard that from Canucks Army back in the day. Draft these guys instead, and certainly they had better draft profiles. Kevin Fiala has gone on to become a great NHLer. Dylan Larkin was drafted, 9 picks after Jake Virtanen. Alex Tuck. So there were some great names on the board, but the Canucks again went with Jake Virtanen at 6th overall. But the rest of that draft, man, oh man, if some of these players actually stuck around in Vancouver, I think I may be giving this one 1st overall despite the Virtanen pick. Okay, that's probably a bit strong. But at 24th overall, I get Jared McCann. I talked about it already. Yeah, they traded him for Branson. Awful stuff. Thatcher Demko, your franchise goalie, you get him at 36th overall. He was the second goalie taken off. Sorry, he was the first goalie taken off the board. Alex Nedeljkovic, the second goalie taken off the board right after him. And Thatcher Demko, I mean, come on. We talked about the injuries, and they are concerning, right? This guy might not be starting training camp. He plans, according to reports, will miss the start of training camp for your Vancouver Canucks. And man, oh man. I'm just happy this team drafted Archer Shilovs, but I think another move's got to come if you don't think if Demko's going to actually miss a stretch of time. And now it's fair to question everything the Canucks have done in that regard. Playing the final 2 regular season games. Trying to rush him back during the playoffs. And I get why you do it. You're trying to win a Stanley Cup. But now reports that he hasn't even taken the ice since prior to Game 7 against Edmonton. And maybe it's bad luck, but maybe there's some mess ups behind the scenes here with Thatcher Demko. I mean, this is your franchise goalie. You shouldn't be messing around. I don't care what you think of Archer Shilovs. Thatcher Demko is way too damn valuable to be messing around with this health, especially with a guy who's had multiple knee problems, hip problems, a concussion. Yeah, he's gone through it for your Vancouver Canucks. But you get Virtanen, you get McCann, you get Demko, Nikita Triamkin, and finally, the one that got away, Gustav Forsling. Unbelievable, man. The best contract in the NHL right now. An absolute stud and a Stanley Cup champion. Let's wrap up this list on the other side. 2 drafts to go. You know the 2 that I'm missing if you've been tuning in. We'll get to that on the other side after we shout out our friends over at eBay Motors. You know the deal, okay? Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time. Ooh, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, baby. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Oh, yeah, baby. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, you're back here on Locked On Canucks. Your Canucks every day, almost every damn day here, even in late August. When the only thing going on is drama, man. Drama about Thatcher Demko. Are the Canucks going to sign another goaltender? We did touch on that last week, so go check out that episode, those clips, if you watch us on YouTube. And man, oh man, it's got me stressing out a bit. But here's the thing I'm reminding myself before I wrap up the list. Last season, closer to October, but really it was the opening night of last season. Being a Canuck fan was really stressful. You had the Elias Pettersson contract drama and news about how Elliot Friedman saying the Canucks actually want to wait and see how the season goes with Pettersson first. And then the Garland trade request, that rumor comes out. He's not too happy about it. That was the opening night of the season. And what happened? The Canucks had one of their best regular seasons in franchise history, and the best season you could argue that they've had since 2011, right? There's been some better statistical regular seasons, but last season with the first round victory, pushing the Oilers to 7 games, it was one of the best seasons in a long time. And it started with drama. There's always going to be drama. There's drama right now. And I still think that the Canucks are primed for a pretty damn good season in 2024-25. But you'd like to have Demko back because, yeah, last I checked, he's pretty good at hockey. Speaking of guys who are good at hockey, there's a couple guys who are really good at hockey here at the end of the list here as we rank the Canucks drafts from the 2010s from worst to best. And I'm going to go at number 2. Again, 2 drafts left. At number 2, I'm going with the 2017 draft. And this draft was supposed to be pretty legendary. You know, not only did the Canucks draft Pettersson, but we're talking about all the other guys below him. Why is no one taking Cole Lind? You get Jonah Gadjevich, who, you know, was a goal game in the AHL during the COVID year. You had Michael DiPietro, supposed to be the goalie of the future. You had Jack Rathbone tearing it up. It was supposed to be this legendary draft class. Even Petrus Palmu had his moments as a prospect. But really, the only guy who's turned into a legit NHLer, of course, is EP40, the alien himself. And despite the ups and downs, he leads the draft class in points by a mile. By a mile. And look, I know you got Cale Makar there, who has actually a slightly better points per game average. But Elias Pettersson has 412 points in 407 career games. Next best on the list is Nico Hischier with 353 points in 452 games. Then you got Makar with 336 points in 315 games. The Elias Pettersson pick, it was kind of criticized at the time. The stories about, I'm talking about the Jim Benning statue here, but there's some pretty serious reports out there, and I buy them based on who's reporting and the information compiled, that he didn't really want Pettersson. He wanted Cody Glass, and Cody Glass, might I add, has been traded, 2-3 times now in his NHL career? Still trying to figure it out. But Elias Pettersson, I know he's got a lot of criticism in this market. He's got a lot of heat on him going into next season. But he is one of the best players in Canucks history. And then for my money, the second best player in this draft class behind Cale Makar. That leaves us with one draft. The best draft of the 2010s. And I'm going with it for one reason, because there's only one guy in this draft class who's played NHL games, but it is Quinn freaking Hughes, baby. And the best draft of the 2010s for the Vancouver Canucks, I'm saying, is the 2018 draft. You know, the Canucks throughout their 54-year history have never selected first overall. But in 2018, they may as well have selected first overall, despite losing the draft lottery again. Despite sliding down to 7th overall. 2018 was the year where, in my mind, the Canucks selected first overall. Because look at the guys ahead of them. I mean, Rasmus Dahlin, first overall, turned into a good player. Andrei Svechnikov, good player for Carolina. Those guys, you know, they were the top 2 all the way. Jesperi Kotkaniemi at number 3 overall has already been traded. Brady Tkachuk in Ottawa, he's a stud. And then you have Barrett Hayton. Arizona selected Barrett Hayton, the next Patrice Bergeron at number 5. And yeah, he is not become the next Patrice Bergeron. Let's just put it that way. Last year playing 33 games with 3 goals, 10 points. Oh my God, what a terrible pick by Arizona, now Utah. And then finally at 6 overall, you thought this was going to happen. The Detroit Red Wings play in the same state where Quinn Hughes played his university hockey in Michigan. And they freaking pass on Quinn Hughes to select Filip Zadina, who, in fairness, for a while was projected to go 3rd overall in this draft, based on being almost a goal per game in his one season in the CHL. But man, oh man, Filip Zadina now on his 2nd team, played with San Jose last season, 13 goals, 23 points in 72 games, a -44. How is it even possible? So Dahlin, Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi, Tkachuk, Hayden, Zadina, and then I've never seen Jim Benning look more bamboozled in my life. And that's saying something, because this guy was bamboozled a lot of the time that he was GM. He waddles up to the podium. The Vancouver Canucks select Quinn Hughes. That is one of the best moments in franchise history. It is the moment where the Canucks, that 7 may as well have been a 1. The Canucks selected 1st overall in 2018. And that's why I'm saying the best draft of the Canucks from the 2010s was selecting Quinn Hughes, who, again, he was the 1st overall pick in that draft. And even if you look at points right now from that draft, Brady Tkachuk leads the way with 349 points in 440 games. Quinn Hughes with the best, not only 2nd overall in points, trailing Tkachuk by a little bit, but the best points per game average too. Almost a point a game. A point a game from the D. Are you kidding me? 333 points in 365 career games. There's no mistake. There's no debate. Quinn Hughes was the best player in the 2018 draft. And I don't care if the Canucks selected 7. That was the year they selected 1st overall. That was my list. All right. That's another episode of Locked on Canucks. And this week, Conan, going back in the time machine a bit, we'll get back to some news as it breaks throughout the week. Again, Kyle in Mexico. Enjoy Mexico, bud. And a shout out to you and you, whether you're an everyday or an occasional listener, a first-time listener, a new subscriber, or you joined us on the live show on YouTube. Man, I choked up there thinking about Quinn Hughes, man. Unbelievable. The best draft pick in Canucks history. Let's go, baby. Coming up this week, again, if there's breaking news, we'll get to it. But I also want to look at the worst draft picks in Canucks history, okay? We touched on the drafts from the 2010s here. What's some of the biggest draft misses? Who did the Canucks miss out on by selecting some dud, okay? And we'll talk a bit more about the Demko situation, the reports on which goalies are potentially coming to Vancouver. And finally, we're going to look at the prospect pool this week as well. Stay tuned for all of that here on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. It don't matter. We just appreciate you for tuning in. But I got to get out of here. I'm Trevor Beggs, and you've been listening to Locked on Canucks.
You're Locked on Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked on